And now to our next conversation. We see Nigeria's housing crisis creating both a challenge and a massive investment opportunity, with millions of Nigerians still in need of, decent and affordable homes. The government is looking to, deepen housing partnerships with countries such as China and Japan, bringing in foreign capital, technology, and construction expertise. But there's a critical question. Will these partnerships help Nigeria close its housing gap, or could they put further pressure on local developers already struggling with high construction and financing costs? Well, joining me to discuss now, we have Mr. Akin Patola, the chapter president, FIA BCI Nigeria, International Real Estate Federation. And it joins me right here in the studio. It's great to have you, sir. Good morning.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. So, we're talking housing today, and we've seen some moves, from the government lately. I guess the latest one was the Nigeria-China housing proposal, looking at building about 10,000 affordable housing, 10,000 units. We've seen the mass social housing targeting 150,000 houses, renewed hope units. They're supposed to provide about 7,000, housing units. The planned renewed hope cities. I think they're looking for about 6. Estate locations under construction. I think they're about 12 so far. So we're seeing the plans there, but the gap is still is still wide. Let's look at the proposed Chinese and Japanese housing partnership at this point, because some would hear China and wonder, even China have their problems when it comes to the housing market in their own country, at this point. But there's nothing wrong with having a partnership. They're supposed to bring in technology here, get as many units out as possible with less cost. How are you seeing that?
Okay, thank you. So I think it's a good initiative. I always like when countries' economies think out of the box and look for international best practice. As you rightly said, China has gotten it right. There is no country in the world that has gotten the housing shortage challenge solved. I've been opportune, because of the association that I belong to have traveled to over 50 countries. So when we go to those countries, we like to do some comparative analysis and benchmarking. Egypt is doing a lot, close to 1 million units over the years. Singapore also, Japan. These are countries we want to learn from. China, with the technology that you just mentioned, these are things that we can adopt. But 2 things are critical based on the question you asked. Number one, there's the affordability challenge and financing challenge. If we don't get it right, we still have a long way to go. Don't forget that we have a huge challenge of population. A lot of our population are within the youthful demographic, so we need to be very intentional. It's not just about building now, it's about, can people afford it? Then where's the financing? So everything is not cash based, and we can use mortgage to also bridge that gap.
Right. And talking about affordability, at this point we've seen the prices of homes skyrocket, between if you're measuring in the last 6 years, or so. And it almost seems that all of this started when the Naira got devalued.
Correct.
So that impacted everything, and before you could get a duplex, a detached house in Chevron area for like 50 million. That was before the great devaluation. I call it that at this point. So it almost seems, if the Naira was still around maybe 300 to the dollar, we might not see prices rise the way they've risen so far. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Don't forget that real estate as a product, people usually like to compare across board with other forms of investments. So you have the investor market, you have the developers market, and you have the occupiers market. Just think of it like 3 legs of a stool. Those 3 must be in place, otherwise it will be wobbly and you can take a fall. So we've seen the huge cost inflation across board. Prices of properties are way high, not just in Lagos, across everywhere. And it's not isolated to just Nigeria, it's the world over. So is there demand for those places? If the demand is not there, gradually those prices will begin to fall. But the demand is there. But it's not across board. We see a lot of developers concentrating on the top echelon. By the top echelon, I mean the ultra luxury residential aspect. They build there, tenancies, they rent faster there. But there is the opportunity at the bottom of the pyramid. There's a book that I usually like to lay emphasis on by C.K. Prahat. Fantastic book that speaks to, the title of the book is Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid. So if a lot of developers, investors, financiers can concentrate on that bottom part, there's a huge number and it's also very profitable.
Right, because you check, houses around the Ikeja maxes there, 700 million for a detached house. And I'm wondering, I know they're buyers, but wow, looking at what's going on so far. The affordability problem now, why can't Nigerians afford homes? Monetary policy rate, 26.5%. Headline inflation for the month of June, 15.91%. And the housing deficit, about 14.93 million. That's a housing deficit. So we're seeing cost of borrowing is high and a devalued currency. It's like a double whammy. At this point, you get a country like China, you're trying to partner with a country like China, they don't have the, cost of, the high cost of credit like we have here. So it almost seems like, is our problem self-inflicted, or is there a way around it, in your opinion? Because I don't know how you can build a house if you're getting a loan at over 30% and still sell it affordable.
So I agree with you. Statistics data is not encouraging. It is tough looking at those numbers. But there's been a lot of intervention. One of it is the MRIF that government has put in place. Fantastic initiative. Before now, you could only get maximum of maybe 15, 20 million, which is a drop in the ocean. A lot of people are not within that bracket. It's much more affordable. With MRIF, you can now maximum of 100 million. Interest rate, maybe 9.7%, is more attractive. Personally, I've seen a lot of people jump into the home purchase ladder. With time, that will increase with policies like that. You see, a lot of things are happening. Affordability and financing, to me, are the more critical aspects that we need to look at in this basket. We cannot build enough houses. It's not possible. If the data you just churned out, maybe about 15 million shortage that we have, we still have houses that are also inadequate. So if we plan to do 1 million homes every year, it is not just for government at every stage, whether it is the state government or federal, to be able to build. They need PPP arrangements where the private sector will also lead. But I'm an advocate of government creating the enabling environment so that private capital can come in, yes, and also assist to be able to take us out of this quagmire. But I strongly believe that, yes, we can do it, but we need to put all stakeholders together and begin to have those conversations together.
So if we're because we've seen most of the time, China has been accused of, the Chinese government have been accused of, supporting their producers, too much with affordable credit, and most countries can't compete with that. Is it time for Nigeria to start thinking, in that line, actually giving unfair advantage to developers so we can get more units out there? Can we afford unfair advantage as a government?
So the quick answer to your question is yes. Affordability will now be a challenge. We know the Chinese government, they have one of the richest nations, so finance is not so much of a problem for them. But for a country like ours, there are so many pressing needs. There's infrastructure, there's defense, there's healthcare. Everybody pushing on the limited finance that government has in place. I'm a strong advocate of bringing in private capital. These private capitals are available, but they need to see transparency, they need to see the right data, and they need to see that we also are dedicated and interested in bringing these funds in. We all know we have the effective demand, we have the population. So there's no gain saying that, look, if you build it, people will come. whether in the rental market or in the outright purchase. But you see, it's the other thing that I mentioned earlier, that we also need to be very careful, because what we see now is maybe about 3 or 4% of GDP is currently used in the mortgage space. We need to increase that rapidly. So private developers need to come in, government need to assist them gradually. Then we need to also look at the entire ecosystem. What do I mean? Don't just take a single product. Maybe 70-75% of these building materials for building a home are imported. How can government look at that so that we developers can build to scale? That is how we will reach these huge numbers, housing deficit that we're speaking about today.
Yeah, and definitely the mortgage market, we definitely need that to mature more, in Nigeria. But let's imagine now, young guy, working, maybe working in a bank, or earning maybe 5 million in a year, 5 million naira. He's heard about MRIF. Yeah. At this point, he would like to, get in there. What's your advice for somebody like that?
Awesome. So before now, it has been extremely challenging, because the usual practice for commercial banks or mortgage institutions is to look for salaried customers. But now that has changed. If you bring very viable income base, so even business people can now get on that. It is difficult, somebody earning, so maybe a teacher or a regular entrepreneur, earning maybe 500,000 or $1 million monthly. It will be tough for him to save 50 million naira or 60 million naira, you agree with me, to be able to purchase a home. But with a mortgage, and we see this apply in other climates, so it can apply here. He can easily get a mortgage and use that, his annual income, a certain percentage, and use that for his home ownership dream. That will take some people more into home ownership. And also, we also have the thinking out of the box scenario. It's not everybody, according to me, that must own a home. We have people that they don't mind renting, but is the house decent? Is it safe? Is it also affordable from a rental standpoint? Yeah.
Right, and definitely looking at the rental market, we see that is also overheating at this point, and most of the tenants we see out there, it seems like they're at the mercy, of the landlord. Most of the time, another prayer point is, hope your landlord doesn't increase rent in the following year. So there's a lot to navigate, in this market, from rentals to hoping to purchase, at some point. How do you think the average tenant can, navigate all of this, right now, knowing that, incomes are squeezed, there's so much, trying to get into your disposable income at this time? What's your advice for them?
So I think we have to do a lot of, we need to be practical. I'm happy I use Lagos State as a case study. So with the red and the blue rail that we've seen now, people can now live slightly at the fringes. The green rail that will take people, will connect the other two rails, do Marina, Victoria Island, all the way to Ibejuleki, about 60 to 70 kilometers. People can now stay a little bit further where you can afford. You see, the challenges that developers have, and when I say out of the box thinking, it's across board. We need to have developers that can build communities as against estates. So even if I stay far, but there's reliable infrastructure, I can get a place, I can get a regular market, I can get schools for my children, I can get places, good infrastructure, those amenities are there. That's what you see happen in a lot of these advanced countries. Then you can take reliable public transport to work and back again. We also need to do a lot of mixed-use homes within communities, like I said. So the middle class can live slightly with, yes, the more lower end of the pyramid, and everybody can live together. So your drivers, your cooks, your nannies can stay within close proximity. But I see it happen in other places, and it can also happen here. We just need to be a bit more intentional in our thinking, in our development, and also in our financing.
Right, because you look at the planning, when it comes to a state, it almost seems like some states are really connected.
Correct.
So you can say this area is not so far from there. But when you look at a state like Lagos, it seems once you're in the island mainland, there's a huge divide. at this point, if you're staying in Ikorodu now, I want to work on the island, that should be possible.
Correct.
Correct. So if we can solve infrastructure so that Nigerians can get around Lagos or Lagosians or any other state, they can get around that state quicker, is that like a silver bullet that can actually crash these prices down when it comes to rentals and sales? You think that can?
So it won't completely crash the rental price, but it will help. Yes, and I say that because, Lagos State government, they seem to be at the forefront. They're doing amazingly well. I've been following what they're doing even with the waterways.
I'm so sorry. Please hold that thought. We're going to join a live coverage now. 2026, Rule of Jonathan, Democracy, Dialogue. That's happening in Bauchi for our DSTV subscribers. But we're live on other platforms. You can still follow the conversation right here. So sorry, Mr. President, for cutting you there, but you can carry on.
That's fine. So as I was saying, I've been following extensively what Lagos State is doing, especially with their waterways. At least 18 out of the 24 or so local governments can be reached via ferry. So they have a partnership with the European Union to fund and actively develop that area. So within the next few years, you will see fantastic, safe, secure water transport. Less pressure on our roads, less pressure on traffic, even on the trains. So people can stay in Ikorodu, like you mentioned, stay at Ibejuleki, and take a short, safe, affordable ferry ride to the place of work and also commute safely back. Gradually, you see a lot of developers tend to follow the money, they tend to follow demand. So if they see that people don't mind staying at the fringes, at the further ends, then they will build. And I also encourage developers to also build across board. Let's have studio apartments, 1 beds, 2 beds, 3 bedrooms, not just 4-bedroom detached houses and 5-bedroom villas.
Yeah, because we love the 4 and 5 bedrooms. Yeah. We love the mansions, but sometimes all we need is a 1 bed.
Thank you very much.
At this point, thank you so much, Mr. Akin Opratala, the Charter President, FIA-BCI Nigeria, International Real Estate Federation. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.